Hi, it's Sean, the ordinary guy. Today we're going to be making some fantastic prune chutney. It should be really good for you to add to your meats or have along with cheese. It's a great compliment, so keep watching. We'll show you how to do that. Let's look at the ingredients and the utensils and accessories that you need in order to make this chutney. So we need a small grater, spoon, it's a soup spoon, and that's for putting the chutney into the jars when we're finished. A nice wooden spoon with a large handle. We don't want to get too close to the bubbling liquids. A funnel so that we can put it into the bottles. Then in terms of ingredients, we've got apple cider vinegar, it's 1 liter. We have the juice and rind, or the outer skin of 1 orange. We have 6 cloves of garlic. We have 1 tablespoon of juniper berries. We have 2 tablespoons of salt, sea salt. We have 1 tablespoon of ground cloves. We have 100 grams of fresh ginger root, which we will grate into the mix. We have 3 tablespoons of ground coriander. If you can get fresh coriander, even better, but there's limited availability here, so we've gone for ground. I would say when you start with fresh, usually use around 2 cups, and then see how that tastes. You can always add a little bit more afterwards. I have some provincial herbs. I know it's not part of a traditional recipe, but I like to add them in as extra flavor. I have 4 small dried chilies. This adds that heat that we're looking for in the chutney. Then I have a cup of sultanas, a cup of raisins. Then I have 6, let's say, smallish red onions. I like the red onions for things that are slightly more red or dark in color. We usually use the white ones for other chutneys. Then I have 800 grams of sugar. It is a lot of sugar. If you want less, add less, and then you can always add in a little bit more later on to taste. We have 600 grams of apples, which I have peeled and cored, and which we will chop up not too finely, but reasonably a little bit later. And then we have 1 kilo of dried prunes. You can obviously use fresh prunes if you have those available, but at this time of the year, not so much. So I also have a 6-liter pot. It's actually from my favorite brand, WMF. Really like their cookware. We're going to use this. I would suggest you use as large a pot as possible because you don't want the mixture bubbling over. It really makes a mess of your stove. Let's start with adding in the ingredients. Okay, we're ready to start adding all the ingredients into the pot. The great thing about chutney is you pretty much put it all together and let it cook for the next couple of hours, and then it's ready. How fantastic is that? So starting with the prunes. The apples. The onions, which I've now chopped up into pretty much 1/8. You don't have to worry about it being finely chopped because we're going to blitz it a little bit later. The sugar. Sultanas and raisins. We're going to put in the sea salt, cloves, juniper berries, provincial herbs, coriander. I love the smell of coriander. Garlic cloves. You don't have to worry about chopping them up. The orange juice and the rind. 1 liter of apple cider vinegar. So this should provide that very sourish taste that chutney is quite famous for. We have our 4 chilies. And last but not least, we have the ginger, which we'll grate in. As you can see, we've got the bottles in the oven sterilizing. I've got it on 100 degrees Celsius and I've had it in for just under 9 minutes. I'll do 10 minutes and then kind of let it cool off. We're going to start to cook off the mass in the pot, and we will be bringing it up to the boil, letting it boil for about 5 minutes, stirring constantly. We don't want anything sticking to the bottom of the pot, and then we're going to bring it down to a simmer and leave it to simmer for 2, possibly 3 hours. I need to be checking that every probably 15-20 minutes, also stirring it to make sure that at the 20-minute intervals it's not stuck to the bottom, otherwise we will have burnt pieces on the bottom and then the nice chutney on the top, and there's nothing worse than that taste of burnt ingredients coming through the finished item. So make sure that we're doing that. I'll bring you up to speed as we're doing that. We're just going to mix everything together so it's nicely incorporated. Make sure that the sugar is mixed through the other ingredients, and we're going to start the hob at a reasonably high temperature to bring it up to a boil, and then, as I said, boil it for 5 minutes or so. You can see now that the ingredients have started to boil in the pot. As I said, leave it now for 5 minutes, then turn it down. We're going to turn it down to 3 on the stove, which is just a lower heat. We don't want it bubbling too much, but we're going to be then leaving it for a couple of hours. So the chutney mixture has now been simmering away for 2 hours, and you can see it's really incorporated in well. There's still a lot of very large pieces, and for that I'm going to use my hand blender and blend it down a bit. I still like it to have a few chunks, but not quite so large. I might also add in some boiling hot water just to make it a little bit more fluid, because I like my chutney to be a bit more runny as opposed to too thick. We have finished cooking the chutney mixture. Maybe take a look. And now I'm just going to blend it down a bit, because you can see the apple is still chunky and the prunes a little bit. So we've just finished basically blending it down a bit. You can see it's very, very thick. As I said, my personal preference is to have a little bit more liquid, because as it starts to cool, it'll thicken up even more. So I'm going to add in some water, see how it looks, and then mix it through and cook it off a little bit more, and then put it into bottles. Boiling hot water, I've got 500 milliliters here. I'm going to add in 250 mils first and see how it looks. Once I've mixed it in. Given that I've just added another liquid, I'm going to cook it off for a little bit more, just so it all incorporates in well. And then I think we're ready to bottle it. So we'll turn off the chutney mixture now, and we're going to start bottling. Here's where you need your funnel, the bottles that have been sterilized in the oven, and let's start putting the product in. Whoa. All I can say is it smells excellent, and to be honest, full disclosure, whilst off the camera I was tasting it, and I must say it tastes as good as it smells. I've moved on to the next bottle. As you can see with the first one, I've gone right to the top so that when we put on the lid there is no air, and that is so that the product doesn't go off and no bacteria gets in. What we'll also do when we store these items is we turn them upside down, and then basically it seals off the bottles as well. In that way, then we can store the chutney for up to 6 months. So we've now finished the bottling, as you can see. Actually, I've got quite a lot. I'm very pleased about that. What I would suggest is make sure whilst you're handling the bottles, which should be hot out of the oven or straight out of a boiling hot pan, if that's how you sterilized it, that you use a tea towel or a dishcloth to help you handle it and you don't burn your hands. Once you've finished filling everything up and putting the lid on very, very tightly, then turn them upside down. As I said, this helps to seal the bottles. You can start to use the chutney as soon as it's cooled off, but what I find is if you leave it for 4 weeks or so, it allows the flavors to mingle up and it becomes even more delicious. As you can see, I have a half-filled bottle, which I plan to start using this evening with our dinner. So all I can say is I hope you have success with your chutney and that you really enjoy it, as I'm sure we are definitely also going to. Have a good evening. Bye.